The year was 2847, and humanity had changed in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. They had left Earth behind centuries ago, spreading across the stars like seeds carried on a cosmic wind. 300 worlds now bore the mark of human civilization, from frozen moons to jungle planets, from desert colonies to ocean worlds where cities floated on endless seas. The United Earth Coalition governed them all, maintaining peace through careful diplomacy and profitable trade with the dozens of alien species they had encountered. Commander Daniel Harper stood on the bridge of the survey vessel Horizon's Edge, watching the stars drift past on the main view screen. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many wonders to be surprised by anything anymore. Or so he thought. His crew of 42 men and women trusted him completely, and he had never given them reason to doubt that trust. They were explorers, not soldiers. Their mission was simple: chart new systems, catalog new worlds, and make peaceful contact with any intelligent life they discovered. Lieutenant Grace Sullivan sat at the communications console, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. She was young, barely 30, with bright red hair and a smile that could light up any room. She had joined the Survey Corps because she believed in the dream of peaceful exploration. She wanted to be the first voice that new species heard from humanity, a voice of friendship and curiosity. Commander Grace said, her voice carrying a note of excitement that Harper had not heard in months. "I am detecting an anomalous signal from the uncharted system ahead. It is definitely artificial. Someone is out there." Harper leaned forward in his chair. After 20 years of exploration, he still felt that thrill of discovery whenever they found something new. "Can you identify the source?" "Negative, sir. The signal pattern does not match any known species in our database. This could be a first contact situation." The bridge crew exchanged glances. First contact was rare and precious. It meant new friends, new knowledge, new possibilities. Harper ordered the ship to change course toward the signal source. Following standard protocols that had served humanity well for centuries, they emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of a binary star system. 2 suns, one yellow and one red, cast strange shadows across a dozen planets. The innermost world was clearly inhabited. Cities sparkled on its surface like diamonds scattered across brown and gray continents. Thousands of ships moved in orbital patterns around it. "They are advanced," Grace observed. "Technology level appears comparable to our own, maybe slightly higher in some areas." Harper nodded. "Open a channel. Transmit standard first contact package. All languages, all frequencies." The first contact package was humanity's greeting card to the universe. It contained mathematical sequences to establish basic communication. Images of Earth and human beings, samples of music and art, and a simple message of peace translated into every format they could imagine. It had worked with every species humanity had ever encountered. Grace transmitted the package and waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. The alien ships continued their patterns, ignoring the human vessel completely. "Maybe they did not receive it," suggested Lieutenant Kevin Moore, the navigation officer. He was a nervous man who always expected the worst. "They received it," Grace replied. "I am detecting response signals. They are just not responding to us." Harper felt the first hint of unease creep into his stomach. In all his years, he had never encountered a species that simply ignored a first contact attempt. Curiosity was supposed to be universal among intelligent beings. "Try again," he ordered. "Different frequencies. Make sure they know we come in peace." Grace tried again. And again. For 6 hours, she transmitted every variation of friendly greeting that humanity had ever devised. The alien ships continued to ignore them. Then, without warning, everything changed. 70 warships emerged from behind the inhabited planet, moving in perfect formation. They were unlike anything Harper had ever seen. Their hulls were made of some kind of crystal that reflected the light of the twin suns in dazzling patterns. They moved without visible engines, gliding through space like predators stalking prey. "Commander," Kevin said, his voice cracking with fear, "they are surrounding us." Harper kept his voice calm. "Grace, Transmit surrender and peaceful intentions. Make it clear we are not armed. Transmitting now, sir? The crystal ships formed a perfect sphere around the horizon's edge. For a long moment, nothing happened. Harper allowed himself to hope that this was simply a cautious species, one that needed time to assess strangers before welcoming them. That hope died when the first energy beam struck their hull. The ship shuddered. Alarms screamed throughout every corridor. Harper grabbed his chair to keep from falling as another blast tore through the engineering section. "We are under attack," Kevin shouted, stating the obvious. "Shields at 40% and falling. Return fire." Someone yelled, but Harper shook his head. "We have no weapons." "We are a survey ship." He turned to Grace. "Send a distress beacon. Maximum power. Include all sensor data and visual recordings. Earth needs to know what happened here." Grace's hands flew across her console even as another blast knocked out the lights. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the bridge in red. Harper could hear screaming from somewhere below decks. His people were dying, and there was nothing he could do to save them. "Beacon away," Grace reported. Her voice was steady despite the chaos around her. "It will reach Coalition space in approximately 3 weeks." A crystal beam punched through the bridge ceiling. Grace Sullivan never finished her sentence. One moment she was there, the next she was gone, along with half the communications console and 2 other crew members. Harper stared at the empty space where she had been sitting. 23 of his people were already dead. He could feel the ship breaking apart around him. The crystal ships had stopped firing, but only because the horizon's edge was no longer a threat. It was barely holding together. Boarding parties arrived within minutes. Harper finally saw the aliens face to face. They were tall, nearly 3 meters, with bodies made of living crystal that shifted colors as they moved. They had no faces that he could recognize, just smooth surfaces that somehow radiated cold intelligence. They did not speak. They did not gesture. They simply took the surviving crew members and marched them off the dying ship. 19 humans survived the attack. Harper was among them. As he was dragged through the corridors of an alien vessel, he managed to activate the recorder hidden in his uniform collar. His final message was brief. "This is Commander Daniel Harper of the Horizon's Edge. We came in peace. We followed every protocol. We did nothing to provoke them. They gave us no chance to communicate. They simply wanted war. Whoever receives this message, please tell my family I love them. And tell Earth what happened here. These beings, whatever they are not interested in peace. Prepare yourselves." 3 weeks later, Admiral Catherine Brooks received that message in her office on Earth. She played it 7 times, watching the footage of the unprovoked attack, listening to Harper's final words. Then she called an emergency meeting of the Coalition Defense Council. War was coming. Humanity had not chosen it, but they would finish it. The colony world of New Helsinki was everything humanity hoped to become among the stars. 8 million people lived there in harmony with their adopted planet. Farmers tended fields of golden grain that stretched to distant horizons. Children played in parks surrounded by trees brought from Earth and mixed with native plants. Cities rose gracefully from the landscape, their architecture blending human design with respect for the world that hosted them. Governor Samuel Price had led New Helsinki for 15 years. He was a kind man with white hair and gentle eyes who believed that every problem could be solved with patience and goodwill. Under his leadership, the colony had become a model of peaceful development. Crime was almost non-existent. Poverty had been eliminated. The people trusted their governor, and he worked every day to deserve that trust. Dr. Linda Morrison served as the colony's chief medical officer. She had come to New Helsinki 20 years ago as a young doctor, eager to help build something new. Now she ran a network of hospitals and clinics that provided care to every citizen. She knew thousands of people by name, had delivered their children, had held their hands through illness and recovery. New Helsinki was not just her home. It was her life's work. Neither of them had any warning of what was coming. The Breakthrough Scouts had been watching human space for months after the capture of the Horizon's Edge. They had followed trade routes, mapped defense positions, and identified targets. New Helsinki appeared on their lists as an agricultural world with minimal military presence. It was perfect for their purposes. The attack came at dawn. Governor Price was eating breakfast with his wife when his assistant burst through the door. "Sir, unknown ships are entering the system. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds." Price rushed to the government building, still holding his coffee cup. By the time he reached the Situation Room, the numbers had become clear. 300 crystal warships had emerged from faster-than-light travel and were heading directly for New Helsinki. They would arrive within hours. "Contact the coalition fleet," Price ordered. "Request immediate assistance." "Already done, sir. The nearest military vessels are 4 days away." 4 days. Price looked at the tactical display and felt his heart sink. New Helsinki had 6 orbital defense platforms designed to handle pirates and small threats. They were not built to fight a full invasion fleet. "Begin evacuation procedures," he said quietly. "Get as many people off the surface as possible." There was nowhere for 8 million people to go. New Helsinki had transport ships for perhaps 50,000. The rest would have to shelter in place and hope the orbital defenses held. They did not. Old Dr. Morrison was at Central Hospital when the bombardment began. The building shook as energy beams struck the planetary shields. Patients screamed. Equipment fell from shelves. Morrison grabbed a nurse and began organizing. Evacuations to the underground shelters that every colony world maintained for emergencies. "Move the critical patients first," she ordered. "Then families with children. Keep calm. We have time." She did not know if that was true. But panic would kill more people than the enemy ever could. The orbital platforms lasted 6 hours. Morrison watched the defense reports on her tablet while directing the evacuation. One by one, the platforms went dark. Each loss was accompanied by hundreds of deaths. Brave men and women who had volunteered to buy time for their families below. When the shields fell, Morrison had evacuated 12,000 people to the tunnels beneath Central Hospital. It was a fraction of what she had hoped for. It was something. The crystal ships descended through the atmosphere like a swarm of glittering insects. They landed in every major city simultaneously. Ramps opened, and the Breakthrough emerged. Governor Price had refused evacuation. He stood on the steps of the government building with a white flag in his hands, hoping against hope that the invaders would accept surrender. His security team begged him to run, but he would not abandon his people. The first Breakthrough to approach him was nearly 3 meters tall, its crystal body shifting through colors that hurt human eyes. Price held out his hands, showing he carried no weapons. "We surrender," he said clearly. "Please, do not harm our people. Take whatever you want. We will not resist." The Breakthrough did not respond. It simply raised one crystalline limb and struck. Governor Samuel Price died instantly, a body crumpling on the steps he had climbed every morning for 15 years. What followed was not war. It was extermination. The Breakthrough moved through the city systematically, killing every human they found. They did not take prisoners. They did not spare the old, the young, the sick. They killed mothers holding their babies. They killed doctors trying to help the wounded. They killed people who ran and people who surrendered and people who tried to hide deep in the tunnels beneath Central Hospital. Dr. Morrison listened to the reports coming in from across the planet. Each message was worse than the last. The Western continent had fallen silent. The southern cities were burning. The eastern settlements had stopped responding hours ago. "We have to do something," said one of the nurses. A young man named Kyle, who had graduated from medical school just months ago. "We survive," Morrison replied. "That is what we do now. We survive and we remember. Someday, someone will need to tell this story." She organized the 12,000 survivors into a functioning community. They had food stores meant for the hospital, water recycling systems, and enough medical supplies to last months. The tunnels extended for kilometers, with multiple hidden exits. If they were careful, they might avoid detection. Above them, the massacre continued for 3 days, when the rescue fleet finally arrived. Led by Commodore Patrick Lane, they found a dead world. 7,600,000 humans had been killed. The Vrakthur had arranged their bodies in vast geometric patterns visible from orbit, symbols in an alien language that no human could read. Commodore Lane was a veteran of 30 years in the fleet. He had seen battle and death and tragedy, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Search for survivors," he ordered, his voice barely steady. "Check everywhere. Underground, underwater, anywhere people might have hidden." They found Dr. Morrison and her 12,000 survivors after 2 days of searching. She emerged from the tunnels into sunlight, surrounded by the people she had saved. Her first words to Commodore Lane would be remembered for centuries. "The children made it," she said. "We saved the children." Lane looked at the thin, exhausted woman who had performed a miracle in the darkness while her world died above her. "You saved more than children, Doctor. You saved the witnesses." Morrison nodded slowly. "Good, because the galaxy needs to know what happened here. They murdered us for no reason. They gave us no chance. And someone needs to answer for that." The footage of New Helsinki was transmitted to every human world within hours. People watched in horror as the evidence played on their screens. They saw Governor Price murdered while offering surrender. They saw families cut down in their homes. They saw the geometric patterns of bodies, a message of contempt written in human flesh. The United Earth Coalition convened an emergency session. Every representative attended, from the oldest Earth nations to the newest frontier colonies. The vote for total war was unanimous. Not one voice spoke for negotiation or restraint. Humanity had tried to live in peace with the universe. The universe had answered with genocide. Now humanity would answer in kind. Admiral Catherine Brooks had served humanity for 40 years. She had commanded ships, led fleets, and trained the next generation of officers. She had always believed that the military existed to protect peace, not to wage war. But standing in the coalition war room, watching the footage from New Helsinki play on endless loop, she understood that. Some enemies left no room for peace. The Coalition Council had given her unlimited authority and unlimited resources. Every shipyard in human space was working at maximum capacity. Every academy had accelerated its training programs. Every colony had sent volunteers, far more than could ever be needed. Humanity had awakened, and its anger was a force that shook the stars. Within 6 months, Brooks had assembled a fleet of 4,000 warships. They ranged from small, fast destroyers to massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Every ship was crewed by men and women who had chosen to be there. There were no conscripts in this fleet. Every single person had volunteered. Knowing they might never return home, Captain Marcus Young commanded the dreadnought Inevitable. The flagship of the First Strike Fleet, he was a quiet man in his 40s who rarely smiled but inspired absolute loyalty in his crew. He had lost his brother on New Helsinki, a farmer who had never hurt anyone in his entire life. Young did not speak about his brother. He did not need to. Everyone on his ship carried similar losses. His executive officer was Commander Nicole Peters, a brilliant tactician who had grown up on New Helsinki. Her entire family had died in the massacre. Parents, siblings, cousins, grandparents. Everyone she had ever loved was gone. When she reported for duty, Admiral Brooks had asked if she was certain she could handle the pressure. "I am not here for revenge," Peters had replied. "I am here to make sure this never happens to anyone else. Ever." General Henry Clark developed the battle strategy. He was an older man who had spent his career studying military history, from ancient Earth conflicts to modern space warfare. He understood something that many people forgot. War was not about anger or hatred. War was about achieving objectives with minimum cost. His plan reflected that understanding. Break their hive mind is their greatest strength and their greatest weakness, Clark explained to the assembled commanders. Every individual is connected to a central network that coordinates their entire civilization. Destroy enough nodes, and entire sectors will collapse into chaos. We do not need to kill every Vrakthor. We need to blind them, confuse them, and then strike at their heart. The first offensive targeted the Vrakthor forward bases in the Kepler Expanse, where their invasion fleet had staged before the attack on New Helsinki. Intelligence suggested these bases were lightly defended. As the Vraekther had not expected any meaningful human response, they were wrong, Captain. Young's first strike fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 300 warships against 40 Vraekther vessels. The enemy barely had time to register the threat before human weapons opened fire. The battle lasted 17 minutes. No Vraekther ships escaped. "All targets destroyed," reported Peters, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. "No human casualties." Young nodded slowly. "Send a message to Admiral Brooks. Phase 1 complete. Beginning Phase 2. Phase 2 involved Major Christopher Davis and his special operations teams. Davis was a soldier's soldier. A man who had fought in a dozen conflicts and survived situations that should have killed him many times over. His team specialized in surgical strikes. Against high-value targets, their mission was simple: locate and destroy hive-mind relay stations throughout Vraekther space. Each station coordinated millions of individuals. Destroying them would create blind spots in the Vraekther network, areas where their perfect coordination would dissolve into confusion. Davis led the first mission personally. His team infiltrated a relay station on a Vraekther mining colony, planting explosives while somehow avoiding detection. The station exploded at exactly the moment Young's fleet engaged a nearby defense force. The effect was immediate. The Vraekther ships, normally perfectly coordinated, began moving erratically. Some fired on empty space. Others collided with each other. The battle became a slaughter. Dr. Elizabeth Cole worked behind the lines, studying everything humanity knew about the Vraekther. She was a xenobiologist, one of the best in human space, and her job was to understand the enemy. What she discovered changed the entire war. "They are not just conquerors," she reported to Admiral Brooks. "They are exterminators. Based on records we captured from their forward bases, the Vraekther have destroyed at least 17 intelligent species over the past 10,000 years. They believe themselves to be the natural rulers of the galaxy, the apex predators. Every other species is simply prey to be eliminated." Brooks stared at the report. 17 species. "All of them gone." "Yes, Admiral." "The Vraekther did not attack us because we threatened them. They attacked us because that is what they do. They find younger civilizations and destroy them before they can become rivals." "Then we are not fighting a war," Brooks said quietly. "We are fighting for the survival of our entire species." Oled nodded. "And possibly for every other species that might come after us. If we lose, the Vraekther will continue. If we win, we end their cycle of destruction forever." The war continued for another year. Human fleets pushed deeper and deeper into Vraekther space, winning victory after victory. The enemy fought back with desperate fury, but they had underestimated humanity in ways, quote, they could not comprehend. The Vraekther had never faced a species that could match their technology. They had never faced an enemy that could adapt faster than their hive mind could process new information. And they had never faced an opponent that would not stop, could not be frightened, and absolutely refused to surrender. Captain Young became Admiral Young after the Battle of Crystal Deep, where his fleet destroyed 400 enemy ships while losing only 30. Commander Peters earned a command of her own, leading the Second Fleet in a campaign that liberated two enslaved species who had been kept alive only to serve as labor for the Vraekther. Major Davis and his team struck again and again, destroying relay stations, assassinating key nodes, and spreading chaos throughout the enemy network. Each mission was more dangerous than the last, but Davis never lost a single soldier. His people believed he was impossible to kill, and perhaps they were right by the end of the year. Humanity had pushed the war to the borders of the Vraekther home system. The enemy that had seemed so terrifying at New Helsinki, so unstoppable, so certain of victory, now faced extinction. Admiral Brooks issued her final orders from the bridge of her command ship. Surrounded by holographic displays showing the position of every fleet under her authority, 3,000 warships waited for her word, crewed by millions of humans who had traveled across the galaxy to be here at this moment. All ships, she said calmly, advance. It is time to end this. The final battle for the Vrakthur homeworld was about to begin. The Vrakthur homeworld was called Rix Prime in Human Intelligence Reports. It was a massive planet, 3 times the size of Earth, orbiting an ancient red giant star that filled half the sky with crimson light. Crystalline forests covered entire continents, their branches reaching kilometers into the purple atmosphere. Cities built from living crystals stretched from horizon to horizon, glittering monuments to a civilization that had dominated the galaxy for 10,000 years. 12 billion Vrakthur lived on Crix Prime. More importantly, the central nodes of their hive mind resided there. The ancient structures that connected every individual to the collective consciousness of their species. Destroy those nodes, and the Vrakthur civilization would collapse. Every scout, every soldier, every colonist across their vast empire would be cut off from the whole. Alone, for the first time in their existence, Admiral Catherine Brooks deployed the full might of humanity for this final assault. 3,000 warships formed a sphere around the Crix system, cutting off any possibility of escape or reinforcement. Nothing would leave. Nothing would enter. This would end here. Admiral Marcus Young led the vanguard aboard his flagship, the Inevitable. His fleet of 500 ships would punch through the orbital defenses and establish a perimeter around the planet itself. Behind him, the main fleet waited to deliver the killing blow. All ships report ready, Commander Peters announced from her station. She had transferred back to Young's command for this final battle, unwilling to be anywhere else when the war ended. Young looked at the holographic display showing the enemy positions. The Vrakthur had concentrated everything they had left around their homeworld. Nearly 1,000 warships formed a defensive shell. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. The planet itself was surrounded by shield generators powerful enough to stop anything short of a direct assault. They know this is the end, Young said quietly. They will fight with everything they have. So will we, Peters replied. The battle began at 0300 hours, Earth Standard Time. Young's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel directly inside the defensive perimeter, a maneuver so dangerous that the Vrakthur had never considered it possible. Human navigation technology had improved dramatically during the war, allowing precision jumps that would have seemed like magic a year earlier. The Vrakthur were caught completely off guard. Their ships scrambled to respond, but Young's fleet was already among them, weapons firing at point-blank range. Crystal hulls shattered. Energy beams sliced through space. Ships exploded in cascades of light that briefly outshone the red giant sun. Push forward, Young ordered. Do not give them time to regroup. Vanguard cut through the Vrakthur formation like a knife through paper. Behind them, Admiral Brooks brought the main fleet into position. The defensive shell that had protected Crix Prime for millennia was crumbling. Then the Vrakthur did something unexpected. They transmitted a message. Young stared at his communications officer in disbelief. They want to talk now? Yes, Admiral. The signal is coming from the planet's surface. From the central hive mind chamber. Young considered ignoring it. After everything the Vrakthur had done, they deserved no consideration. But he was a soldier, not a monster. If there was even a chance of ending this without more bloodshed, he had to try. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was strange, a chorus of thousands speaking in perfect unison. It echoed with harmonics that made human ears ache. Why do you do this? The Vrakthur asked. We are the dominant species. We cull the weak. It is the natural order. You cannot change what we are. You cannot change what you are. The strong survive. The weak are eliminated. This is the truth of the universe. Young felt cold anger rise in his chest. He remembered his brother's face. He remembered the footage from New Helsinki. He remembered the 17 species that had been erased from existence by these beings who called themselves the natural rulers of the galaxy. He opened a channel to Admiral Brooks. What is our response, Admiral? Brooks had been listening. Her voice was calm but carried a weight that silenced everyone who heard it. Commander Peters, you lost your entire family at New Helsinki. Would you like to draft our response? Peters stood slowly from her station. Her hands were steady, her eyes clear. She had waited a year for this moment. "I would, Admiral." She walked to the communications console and activated the transmitter. Her words would be recorded, analyzed, and remembered for as long as humans existed. "This is Commander Nicole Peters of the United Earth Coalition. My family was on New Helsinki when your forces attacked. My parents, my brothers, my sisters, my grandparents, my nieces and nephews, everyone I ever loved. You killed them all. You killed 7,600,000 innocent people who had never done anything to harm you. You left their bodies arranged in patterns as a trophy. As a message," she paused, gathering herself. "Now, here's our message. You attacked our people without provocation. You murdered our civilians. You gave us no chance to surrender, no opportunity to negotiate, no possibility of peace. You believed you were the apex predators of the galaxy, that no one could challenge you, that we would simply accept our extinction like all the others before us." Her voice hardened. "You were wrong. There is no negotiation now. There is no surrender we will accept. We did not start this war, but we will finish it. What happens next is the consequence of what you did. Remember that. When your civilization falls, when your cities burn, when your species vanishes from the galaxy, remember that you chose this." We simply answered. She cut the transmission. The bombardment began at 0600 hours. Human weapons had never been designed for destruction on this scale, but necessity was the mother of invention. Orbital defense platforms fell within the first hour. Planetary shields collapsed by noon. The crystalline cities that had stood for 10,000 years began to crumble under sustained fire. Major Christopher Davis led the ground assault. His teams landed near the central hive mind chamber, an ancient structure where the collective consciousness of the Vrakther species resided. It was defended by the last Vrakther warriors, beings who knew they were fighting for the survival of everything they were. The battle lasted 3 days. Davis had never experienced combat like this. The Vrakther fought with desperate fury, throwing themselves at human positions without regard for their own lives. They knew that if the hive mind fell, their entire civilization would dissolve into chaos. 12 billion individuals who had never known solitude would suddenly find themselves alone. On the third day, Davis's team breached the chamber's outer defenses. They fought through corridors of living crystal, past guardians who would not retreat, could not surrender, and refused to die easily. Human soldiers fell beside their enemies, their sacrifices buying meters of progress at a time. Davis himself led the final assault. He was wounded twice, once in the shoulder and once in the leg, but he kept moving. Behind him, the survivors of his team followed. They found the core of the hive mind at the center of the chamber. It was beautiful in a terrible way, a vast network of crystal filaments that pulsed with light, connecting billions of minds across the planet and beyond. For 10,000 years, this structure had coordinated the Vrakther, had made them unstoppable, had driven them to conquer and destroy. Davis looked at it for a long moment. He thought about New Helsinki. He thought about the 17 species who had died before humans ever reached the stars. He thought about what the galaxy would be like with the Vrakther gone. Then he gave the order. The explosives destroyed the core in a cascade of shattering crystal. The light died. The pulses stopped. Across Crix Prime and throughout the Empire, 12 billion Vrakther suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds for the first time in their existence. Many of them simply stopped functioning. Unable to process existence without the collective, others went mad, attacking everything around them, including each other. A few, perhaps the strongest, tried to adapt, but they had never learned to think as individuals. They did not know how. Davis stood in the ruins of the chamber, surrounded by the bodies of friends and enemies. The war was over. The Vrakther were finished. He activated his communicator. Mission complete. The hive mind is destroyed. Above the planet, Admiral Young received the message. He looked at the view screen at the burning world below and felt nothing but exhaustion. "Cease fire," he ordered. "It is done." The war ended not with celebration, but with exhaustion. Humanity had won, but the cost was measured in millions of lives and countless worlds scarred by the marks of battle. Ships returned home carrying crews who had aged years and months. Soldiers came back to families who barely recognized them. And everywhere people struggled to understand what they had done and what it meant for the future. Admiral Catherine Brooks retired to Earth 3 months. After the destruction of Crix Prime, she had led humanity through its darkest hour, and now she needed rest. But retirement did not mean silence. She spent her remaining years writing the official history of the conflict, determined that future generations would understand both the necessity and the terrible cost of what had happened. Memoir was titled The Price of Peace. It became required reading at every military academy in human space. In its pages, she wrote honestly about the decisions she had made, the lives she had ordered into danger, and the burden of command that would never leave her. "We did not want this war," she wrote in the final chapter. "We would have lived happily alongside the Vrakther if they had allowed it. We extended friendship, and they answered with murder. We offered peace, and they gave us genocide. In the end, we had no choice but to become something we never wanted to be. We became destroyers. We became the thing that the galaxy feared, and we did it to survive." Admiral Marcus Young was promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of all frontier defenses. He never sought the position, but humanity needed someone who understood what was at stake. Under his leadership, the Coalition built a network of early warning stations and rapid response fleets that could reach any threatened world within days. His first act was to establish a memorial station in orbit around what had once been New Helsinki. The planet itself was being slowly restored, its soil cleaned of contamination, its cities rebuilt by colonists who believed in second chances. But the station remained as a permanent reminder. The walls of the memorial were carved from black marble brought from Earth. Every name of every victim was inscribed there. 7,600,000 individuals who had lived and loved and died. Visitors walked through corridors of names, reading them in silence, touching the stone, weeping. At the center of the memorial was a simple message. The same words that Governor Samuel Price had written in his final log entry: "We did nothing to deserve this." Commander Nicole Peters became an ambassador. She traveled to every alien civilization in the known galaxy, meeting with leaders and ordinary people alike. Her message was always the same, delivered with the quiet intensity of someone who had lost everything and rebuilt herself from the ashes. "We did not want this war," she told them. "We would have been content to live in peace, to trade, to share knowledge, to grow together as neighbors in this vast universe. But when our people were murdered," we answered. The Vrakther believed they were invincible. They believed that no one could stop them. They were wrong. She would pause then, letting her words sink in. "Humanity is not a violent species by nature. We prefer building to destroying. We prefer friendship to war. But we are also survivors. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars among ourselves. We have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. And when someone threatens our existence, we will do whatever is necessary to protect our own." The galactic community listened carefully. In the centuries that followed, humanity became known not as conquerors, but as a species that valued peace above all things, except justice. The other civilizations watched humans build trade networks and cultural exchanges. They saw human ships carrying medicine to plague worlds and supplies to disaster zones. They saw human diplomats working tirelessly to resolve conflicts between other species, but they also remembered what had happened to the Vrakther, and none of them ever forgot. Dr. Elizabeth Cole continued her research into the species that had nearly destroyed humanity. Her findings, published over decades of work, revealed the full scope of Vrakther evil. 17 intelligent species had been exterminated before humans entered the picture. Some had been advanced civilizations. Others had been primitive cultures just beginning to reach for the stars. All of them were gone, erased so completely that only fragments of their existence remained in Vrakther records. They saw themselves as the natural order of the galaxy, Cole wrote. predators who existed to hunt prey. They could not imagine any other way of being. When they encountered humanity, they assumed we would be just another victim, another species to add to their collection of extinctions. She paused in her writing. Remembering the first time she had seen footage of New Helsinki, they did not understand that we were different. They did not understand that we would fight back. And they certainly did not understand that we would win. On the anniversary of the New Helsinki massacre, humans across all colonized worlds observed a moment of silence. At exactly noon, Earth Standard Time, every person stopped what they were doing. Factories went quiet. Ships paused in orbit. Children in schools bowed their heads. For 1 minute, 300 worlds remembered. Then the moment passed, and life continued. People returned to their work. Children went back to their lessons. Ships resumed their journeys. That was humanity's true nature, after all. Violence was only what they became when given no other choice. In peace, they were farmers and artists and scientists and builders. They raised families. They explored new worlds. They created things of beauty and wonder. The ruins of Crix Prime were left undisturbed, a monument visible to any species with sufficiently advanced telescopes. The crystalline cities stood frozen in decay, their spires crumbling slowly over centuries. No one colonized the system. No one salvaged the wreckage. It was left as a warning, as a reminder, as a lesson written in the bones of a dead civilization. Major Christopher Davis visited the memorial station once. Years after the war, he walked through the corridors of names, reading some of them aloud. He found a quiet corner where no one could see him, and he wept for the friends he had lost, for the enemies he had killed, and for the boy he had been before the war, changed him forever. When he left, he stopped at the central monument and added his own message to the thousands left by other visitors. It was brief, as all his words were. We remember. We always will. In the archives of the United Earths Coalition, the Vrekthur War was summarized in official records that future historians would study for centuries. The causes, the battles, the strategies, the casualties, all of it was documented with careful precision. But the summary that people remembered, the one that captured everything future generations needed to know, was just a single sentence. It appeared at the end of the official report, beneath all the statistics and analysis. The Vrekthur provoked humanity once. There was no second time. And in the vast silence between stars, that message echoed through the ages. Species rose and fell. Empires expanded and collapsed. Wars were fought and forgotten. But the story of what happened to the Vrekthur was passed down through countless civilizations, a legend that grew with each telling. They spoke of a peaceful species that had been pushed too far. They spoke of a revenge so complete that nothing remained of